Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona with the May 22nd edition of Horses to Watch. On the show this week, I want to take a look at three replays from last weekend at Belmont Park. A couple of turf races and one race on the dirt, which we'll discuss a little bit later. We'll start with the two turf races though. Both of these are turf sprints, and I'm going to begin with the race from last Friday. It was actually the final race on Friday's card, a maiden claiming race for New York breds, 40,000 going 6 furlongs on the turf. And I want to focus on the number 3 horse MAGNESITE. We'll break from the starting gate, and you'll see that MAGNESITE actually breaks fine. Some horses have trouble at the break. He's not one of those, though. He breaks with the field, and his rider, Aragona, is just going to sort of rein him in the early going and take him towards the back of the pack because he has run as a closer in his prior starts, so he's going to close in this race. And you do want to take note of the fractions as they go up in this race because it is a race that features a bit of a fast pace. The horses that are towards the front end are going to be fading towards the end. So you will notice that MAGNESITE, as he's closing at the end of this race, is taking advantage of a fast pace to some extent, but he also gets in some trouble here. So you see around the far turn, he starts to race a little bit keenly under Aragona. He's wearing blinkers in this race. He was wearing blinkers, I believe, for the first time in his initial turf start 2 back, and he was extremely keen that day coming around the far turn. He was a little bit more settled in this race, but you can see Concel still has a handful of horse coming around the far turn, and at this point, he just has to pick a place to go, find a clear path, and he's going to be unable to do that. The last thing that you want to have happen when you have a horse with so much run is to stick him on the rail behind a bunch of tiring runners ahead of him. And you see right here, MAGNESITE just gets in a lot of trouble, has to steady, loses all of his momentum. Horses that he was right alongside have now gained about 4 lengths on him as they closed on the outside, whereas he was stuck in behind horses on the inside. He's actually going to regain his momentum as they cross the finish line, closing to be third in this race. And as they come past the wire and into the gallop out, he's actually going to gallop out way ahead of the winner of this race. Coming into the clubhouse turn, he's going to get quite a margin on the rest of the field. So this is a horse that really did have some run at the end of this race, and you're going to see as they cross the wire, there he is in the blue silks, way ahead of the second place finisher and the horse who won the race in the white blinkers way back there. So MAGNESITE's a horse that just didn't get to really put forth his top effort in this race. It was only his second start on the turf. I think this horse actually has a bit of a future in these maiden claiming races sprinting on the turf. So with the winner, Give the Man a Cigar, out of this condition now, facing a similar field next time, I think it could be pretty formidable in this spot. So he's a horse that I'll be looking for in the same conditions next time out. On Saturday, there was another turf sprint. This is a bit higher quality. It was the Grade 3 Soaring Softly, the feature last weekend at Belmont Park. And I want to focus on the favorite in this race, the number 3 STILLWATER COVE, who just did not get the right trip and really lost all chance. She probably was going to win this race. We'll pick the trip up from the start, and like the horse we just saw, STILLWATER COVE breaks fine. She breaks with the field, but the pace situation in this race was a little bit murky. The number 1 horse, MAGNESITE, is going to go out to set the pace. And while the fractions do seem to be relatively honest, you'll notice that just in terms of race flow, the entire field was pretty well bunched throughout the race. So it certainly didn't play out like a race that featured a very fast pace. It was really just a race where you had to get the right trip and get into the clear at the right point to be successful. And STILLWATER COVE, I'm fine that she's rated in this race because she's rated kindly in the past. She's not a horse that needs the lead, although she does have some tactical speed. She can sit off some rivals, but she is racing pretty keenly in behind runners. And Joe Bravo, her rider, just is trying to get her to settle down around the far turn. He's working out a pretty good trip for her up until this point, but you'll see that the trouble starts to begin as they approach the quarter pole, because the eventual winner of this race, the number 5 Seek and Destroy, is going to get a preferred outside trip. She's just going to loop the field and really make that unencumbered outside run without breaking her momentum at any point, whereas STILLWATER COVE is going to have to accelerate to get out of that position from being in behind horses. And you see right here, Joe Bravo has a ton of horse underneath him with STILLWATER COVE, and he's going to try to angle outside of the leader, MAGNESITE, and he just can't quite do it because the number 4 horse is not vacating that position. He's going to try to duck out inside, but another horse has already taken that spot at this point, so he's just stuck in behind this tiring number 1 horse, and he's just going to completely steady out of position. This filly had a ton of run underneath her and just never got to unleash that closing kick that she would have produced. She finishes 4th in this race. I don't think it's a stretch to say that she really would have won this race since she was the favorite coming in, and Wesley Ward typically does so well with these horses coming into New York at this time of year. I really liked her last race at Keeneland in her prior start when she was second to a good filly Ginger Nut in a stakes race over there. So I feel like STILLWATER COVE is in very good form right now. She just didn't get to show it in this race, but I think she'll be very dangerous in any of the stakes races that they run in New York for the 3-year-old filly really sprinting on the turf. And there will be more of those throughout the summer. So look for her in any of those races moving forward. The final race we'll talk about this week is a dirt race that took place on Sunday. It's the 6th race on that card, a maiden claiming event, $75,000 tag, going 1 mile. We'll pick it up from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 2 horse, Red Right Hand. And he doesn't get into any real trouble, but I want to talk about this horse's trip because the way that the main track was playing on both Saturday and Sunday's card was very conducive to horses racing in the inside path. I would say there was a strong inside rail bias on both days. It was more evident on Saturday when we ran more dirt races, but there were a few dirt races on Sunday that really did play to inside horses and just exaggerated performances of horses that raced in that path closest to the rail. And that's especially evident in this race with the number 3 Mental Model, who's going to win the race. You'll see that he's on the lead, he's setting pretty fast fractions, and he's just going to draw off in the stretch. He just keeps finding more, even though he was setting such a fast pace. And you typically see things like that in races where there is a rail bias. The number 2 Red Right Hand, I want to highlight him because he's one of the few horses on either Saturday or Sunday that actually ran a top effort, despite the fact that he was racing wide throughout. He's never on the rail at any point. You see he's actually 4 wide coming around the far turn. That would not be the place to be normally on a fair racetrack, losing that much ground, but it's especially not the place to be on a racetrack that's favoring the inside path. You see coming to the quarter pole, even the number 1 horse, who was a long shot in this race, is going to get energized by racing on the rail, and he's going to finish 3rd at a big price, just merely because he was riding the rail the entire way. Red Right Hand is going to get past him in the late stages, and he's actually going to finish up pretty well here. He finishes far behind the eventual winner, Mental Model, but he never stops coming in this race. And I just thought, given how many horses backed up in the stretch after racing on the outside on both Saturday and Sunday, this horse's performance kind of stood out for me because he was just the outlier among all the horses that were racing in the outside pass on these days. He was coming to New York for trainer Kelsey Danner in this spot, off a disappointing effort in his return race at Keeneland, but it feels like he took a big step forward this time. This was a maiden claiming event, but it was a pretty high-priced maiden claimer, and I would look for this horse if he steps back up into maiden special weights next time, just given how well he ran in this race. He's a horse that might be able to make some noise in a tougher spot in his following start. So hopefully we can make a score with one of these horses next time they run, because I think all of these horses ran a bit better than it seems last weekend at Belmont Park. So thanks for listening this week. I'll be back next week with 3 more horses to watch.